Welcome in, everybody. Thursday night edition, Air Tour Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Tours. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We're going to do something a little bit different here on a Thursday evening here in still early, but quickly turning into mid-August of 2025. So I'm actually hosting Fox Sports Radio on Thursday night, so we can't do the normal 5 p.m., 6 p.m. start time for the show. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to welcome in one of my favorite people in sports media, Curtis Wilkerson from Inside Arkansas. Okay, so Curtis Wilkerson, if you listen to the show, we've had John Neighbors on. Love John. Curtis works alongside John, and I think Curtis is as good as anybody in the Arkansas media covering Arkansas basketball, but also all things Razorbacks, right? So we're going to talk tonight about, I think it'll be a fun interview about kind of the state of things at Arkansas. One, what did you learn covering John Calipari for 1 year? What are realistic expectations? Where does this program go from here? And we'll talk a little bit about Arkansas football as well. Obviously, make or break year. Is that even the right thing to say? For Sam Pittman, I just think it's an interesting time. Let me put it that way. I will let Curtis, who covers the team day in and day out, share his thoughts on the state of Arkansas football, in addition to Arkansas basketball and John Calipari. So this is what I need you to do. Before we get started, a couple quick things. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Listen, new clips, new videos going up every single day. We are not slowing down in the football season, in the lead up to college basketball. We're going to have so much content, I don't even know what to do with it all. So make sure that you're subscribed. Also, the podcast available, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Really quickly, before we get started, do want to also, as we always do, you already know, I want to thank our friends. I want to thank our partners. I want to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so it's that time of year. I've told you all about Collie Puffs before, but listen, bottom line is it is that time of year. You're trying to stay healthy. Summer's almost over, but as you get ready to sit on the couch and watch football all day, Saturday and Sunday, you need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something you'll love, something your kids will love. Try Collie Puffs. This is a family-owned company not far from where I live. Joey, founder, huge sports fan. But the coolest part is he was sitting on the couch one day and said, I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something I'm going to love, something my kids are going to love. I need to create, and he did create, Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. Here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious, okay? At this point, you don't need to take my word for it. Try them for yourself. All you got to do, visit ColliePuffs.com. That's ColliePuffs.com. You can use promo code Torres and get 15% off your first purchase and any purchase. If you've purchased before 2, 3, 4, 10 times, every time you purchase, 15% off when you use the code Torres. So ColliePuffs.com, promo code Torres. Thank you to Collie Puffs for being a partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. Love working with Collie Puffs. Thank you for their support. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, our old buddy, Curtis Wilkerson, Inside Arkansas, joins me. Quick break. Curtis Wilkerson on the other side. Be right back. All right, joining me via Zoom. It was about, I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago. I think I was talking about J.J. Andrews of all things, and in the chat, America was demanding. They said, Torres, when are you going to get Curtis Wilkerson on to talk a little Hogs basketball and football? We've had John Neighbors on, but apparently everybody's tired of that guy. So they were like, get Curtis Wilkerson, Inside Arkansas. Dude, I love everything you guys do. I love everything you do. I'm so excited to finally chat on air. We chat plenty off air. What's going on, man? How's it going?
What's up, brother, man? I'm excited to be on. Appreciate. Sometimes I get a little bit tired of John too. It's okay. You just got to take him in small doses, Sure. But man, always tapped into the show, have been for a long time, and honestly, is another guy who is just ready and willing to talk college basketball year round. I really respect the grind. So it kind of feels like as often as we mention each other on our respective shows, this is a meeting of the minds that's a little bit overdue. I mean, we even got a spicy email to our Inside Arkansas account earlier in the week about a fan fired up over one of your takes. I'm like, buddy, why are you sending this to me instead of AT? But I love it though, man. I'm excited to be on with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's that time of year where I think we're just all kind of throwing crap up against the wall because, it was a spicy email and the genesis was Torres doesn't know what he's talking about. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like right now, there ain't much. We're all just I don't want to say pulling stuff out of our you-know-whats, but we're all struggling. But you know what? I do want to talk. We'll start with Hog Hoops because, I have enjoyed following this story. I have enjoyed, the hot, not necessarily the lows, because there were certainly some lows last season, but I'd just be curious for your perspective. Like, we don't have to go back to the day John Calipari was hired and where were you? Like, but we're a year in now. It feels like from a distance, like Cal is really comfortable now. And just year one, there were a lot of highs, there were a lot of lows. We don't have to go through like, oh, on January 23rd, this happened. But just now that you're a year in, what have you learned? What was the experience like? And frankly, like, did you think that John Calipari was going to maybe move the needle outside of the Arkansas fan base the way that he did this year? Because I think that even shocked me a little bit.
It's been interesting. You mentioned that he seems to be more comfortable, and I agree with that 100%. And I also think that Arkansas has become more comfortable with him. People forget. I mean, it was an adjustment for Razorback fans. You're excited about getting a Hall of Fame head coach in, all those things, but for the last 15 plus years, people hated him. That's just kind of the way it was when you were at Kentucky and everything. It was a little bit of a slow start. It was weird because he does the thing all the time where he said, I asked to see the team and there was no team, or, I asked for the schedule. There was no schedule. There was a lot of truth to all that. So once he got hired, really up until about the start of the season, we didn't hear from him all that much. He did a media availability here or there, but we didn't see too much of him. We didn't see too much of the team. And you got into the season, and I think that it felt like there was a little bit of a disconnection maybe between the fan base and the team. Well, and then they start to struggle a little bit. They get off to the 0-5 start in SEC play, and you're like, man, maybe this isn't going so well. Like, what the heck is going on here? But it did all click at a certain point there, and the team obviously started playing better. And I think something that really endeared the fan base to Coach Cal and this team was seeing everything that went into that reunion at Kentucky at Rupp Arena, the emotions behind it, and then catapulting that into some more wins. And Arkansas fans like victories. They like March Madness, and getting through the Sweet 16 and everything was huge for them. And I almost feel like it was a learning experience for everybody, because now I think Razorback fans are settled in. He's really endeared himself. He's very comfortable in his own skin around here, and he's starting to open up a little bit more. Open up like he opened up a practice, which is something he didn't do the entire season last year, which was awesome. He sent 4 guys up to the podium to talk to us in July or whatever it was, and we didn't necessarily get that at all before the start of last season. So I think he's a little bit more trusting and familiar with his surroundings around here, and he's opening up a little bit. And it's been awesome. So people are really excited about the program right now, really excited about the team and where it's headed, and it should be a fun year.
Yeah, I've said many times, and this is going to sound like a negative, and I hope Arkansas fans don't perceive it that way, but like, we do all have to understand that, like, he thought he was retiring at Kentucky, and he was going to get his statue, and he was going to get his, Kobe Bryant, celebration. And so, like, it's not surprising to me that it took a while to adjust. And then on top of it, I think, to your point, I think it's easy to forget like how much goes into building a team in 2025 now, 2024 then, of, yeah, you do have a whole new roster, and you do, even the one player that he retained, it was a process to get there, where it's just a lot different now than it would have been even 4, 5, 6 years ago. But it did feel like by the middle of the year, he got comfortable, and he does, like, he looks re-energized, he's trimmed down, all that good stuff. Let me ask you this, now that you've been around him, and I know that, again, Cal is, hard to really pin down, and, he's always on a private plane somewhere. And so, if you're not 60 minutes or whatever, it's hard to get some quality one-on-one time with him. But like, what would you say as an outsider who covered him for years, and now as somebody who's around him a little bit more, and again, probably not as much as you would like or anybody in the media would like, but you have spent more time around him certainly than pretty much anybody listening to this would have. What would you say the biggest difference is between what you expected from Cal, or what you thought Cal to be, versus who he's been through 12, 13, 14 months on the job?
Oh man, I mean, for the longest, just kind of viewed it's John Cal, it's PayPal Cal. He's a snake oil salesman. Everything that goes along with that. He's larger than life, too cool for school kind of guy. And then you get him here, and you realize that that's actually not the case at all. He's been out doing a lot for the community. He's been very open. He's nice to everybody. I've seen, I think about a couple examples that really stand out to me. One, and I'm sure you're familiar with the name, but we lost just a local legend here in Arkansas media, and Bob Holt was just an incredible figure in our community. And man, the way that Cal handled that, and not just some of the public statements that he made, but showing up to his memorial service from start to finish and paying his respects. It's just little things like that some people just don't do, or they think they don't have time to do, or they think it's not their place. And he made it a point to do that. That's something that really stood out to me. Being out at Baum-Walker Stadium for Arkansas baseball and their regionals and super regionals, he's going to get bombarded with people asking for pictures and handshakes or whatever. And sometimes you'll see coaches and they'll stop and they'll, do a couple minutes and a handful of handshakes or whatever, and then move on about their business. He didn't even watch the game because he sit there, and every single person who wanted an autograph, who wanted a picture, something, just to say hi, just to shake his hand, he was good for all that. And so it's just things like that, getting involved in the community, some of the charity stuff that they've been doing. Just as an outsider, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on from that standpoint at Kentucky. So that's something that's really impressed me. I kind of feel bad for how I viewed him before, because you see him and yeah, he's got his quirks and he's got his things that he does that drive people crazy. I understand that. I get that. But at his core, he actually seems like a really good dude and a genuine human being who cares about others. And that's been good. It's been good. It's been a good fit for the community so far.
Yeah, and I thought you were going to say that, and to me, that's, and in hindsight, I thought about this probably in the last 6 months, is I think that's why at times I can be defensive of him. One, I just think he gets a bad rap for a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of people probably don't know this, but I wrote a book about Kentucky basketball about 8-9 years ago now. He gave me his time, but even just talking to the student managers that have been around him, the best way to put it is the people that can't help him in any way, right? Adu Thero can help him. John Wall can help him. Jamal Murray, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can help him. There are a lot of people that he's come across that can't help him at this point in his life, and he doesn't treat them any different than a John Wall, than a DeMarcus Cousins, than a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whatever. So that's one of the things that I think he just gets I think, like I said, it's just a misinterpretation of who he is. And so I'm glad you brought that up. I thought you might, because that was my experience when I did spend a little time around him many, many, many years ago. Let me actually ask you this. As far as not even the future, but right now, the present, the other thing that I found interesting about his time at Arkansas, I feel like he's kind of rebranded himself as a, not a dude, not a human being, but as a coach. He doesn't, I think at Kentucky, it became he had to be the one and done guy. And that was kind of all he was known for. And I found it interesting when you guys were with that media availability, and he said it throughout the season of, the days of bringing in 6-7 freshmen, the days of, I want some of those 4th, 5th year grown men. I find that to be really interesting. Is it feels like, we talk about getting more comfortable, but, part of what was going to make him successful or not was at Arkansas, this is specifically, was his ability to evolve. And, I'll be honest, I thought, he's going to get there and he's just same song and dance. And, obviously there, he's got to prove that, he could get back to a Final Four, compete for a national championship, whatever. But I find it interesting that, like I said, he's kind of rebranded himself from the one and done guy to, no, in this era, it's older, it's whatever. So I'd just be curious from your perspective, one, perception versus reality, but then two, because it feels like it's been a coaching rebrand, not so much on the court, but on how he builds his rosters.
Yeah, it's definitely more believable, I think, now that we're through a second or in the middle of a second recruiting cycle here, because when he took the job and he didn't have anybody, and obviously he brings some kids over from Kentucky, but he was kind of forced to get out of that comfort zone. And he said all the right things of exactly what you're talking about there of, oh yeah, can't bring in these many freshmen anymore. And yeah, we do need to get older and, all these things, but he didn't have a choice when he got to Arkansas. So I was wondering, once he got his heels dug in a little bit and he can go through a second roster, would he just go right back to the way it was at Kentucky? Or if he meant what he said about adapting and changing, Tiger doesn't change its stripes. Well, this one actually kind of has. So when you look at, for example, the retention that Arkansas has this year, that was one of the first things I was told by, folks who have covered Kentucky basketball, or, folks from BBN who will hit you in the comments or whatever. It's hey, get ready for just a flipped roster every single year. Retention's not really going to be a thing. man, they've got the most in the SEC.
I know, it's
Coming back
crazy,
to
right?
this year, it's kind of nuts to think about. Now, in future years, you would hope that it gets kind of back to the Calipari way of having more draft picks, right, as opposed to just to do Thero this year. That could impact things, but he's kind of set out his plan of, yeah, he still values the freshmen. He's going to get his 3 to 4 a year that are going to be high quality guys, but he doesn't want to be overly reliant on him. That's where he ran into some trouble, in the last few years there. But when you can mix that with more of a balanced roster, like you're talking about, with some retention and some continuity, plus being selective in the portal, I like that because he's not a huge portal guy. But where he is like you said, getting the big physical guys, maybe filling out your front court from those positions out of the transfer portal. I like that. Get the grown men in the grown men spots, and then let the young talented freshmen rock a little bit in the backcourt. So far it's been a pretty good mix. It seems like he is aware of some of the things that have plagued him in the bad way here in the past few years, and if there's a willingness to adapt and evolve and all of that, that's great. And people also do the thing where they say, well, yeah, he's washed as a coach. Like, he's got to have the most talented team out there because X's and O's, you're not going to get anything from him. And, did they suddenly become the Golden State Warriors out there shooting 43s a game and everything? No, and they're probably not going to do that. Is he still running some of the same stuff? Yeah, of course he is. But I think when you look at this team last year and you see, okay, they only had their 9 guys, but then you lose a Boogie Flan, and then you lose an Adou Thiero. And the way that he was able to kind of adapt on the fly and actually coach this team up through that and get them to where they did, at least for me, he escaped some of those allegations about the X's and O's and the actual coaching aspect of it too. I got to be honest.
I was actually going to ask you that, and maybe it's come out, maybe it was in the documentary. I didn't watch all of the documentary that was done. Like, that to me was kind of a low-key kind of incredible thing, was you start 0-5 in SEC play, and it doesn't feel like he ever because you know this stuff, man. I think everybody listening is smart enough to know it as well. But in this portal era, a Jonas Adu, even a DJ Wagner that came, they have no affiliation to Arkansas, and it's like it just feels like it could have been so easy for those dudes to be like, screw this, I'm out in a year, I'm hitting the portal, whatever. Like, do you have any insight into how he was kind of able to hold it together this past season? Because, like I said, I think it was kind of low key. How it started, how it finished, whatever. But like, it could have gone sideways in a hurry. And I guess it did technically for a while, but it got right back on track. And obviously, I think by the end of the year, they were one of the better teams in college basketball, honestly.
Yeah, it's weird because it's this combination of forcing some guys, including himself, maybe out of their comfort zone, but then indirectly forcing some others into their comfort zone. It was kind of a strange deal because they were really trying to figure out, like, what's our identity going to be as a team? What does this look like? And I know because people say that Cal plays the hits, and he does. He absolutely does. But the whole thing about, well, we've only had 5 guys at practice, so we haven't really been able to scrimmage. It was true, man, in this case. You know what I mean? And so, like, Jonas Adu was hurt from the time he stepped on campus in the summer until the time he left. And you had Nelly Davis, who falls off a golf cart and hurts his wrist. He's the number 1 guy in the portal, and he's limited. So guys were in and out. They didn't have any continuity. I've heard you talk on the show about how Boogie Flan kind of maybe got a bad rap for.
Oh, people are fired up about that one sentence that I said like 6 months ago. So goodness gracious. But yeah,
I mean, you're 100% right though, from the standpoint of, yes, when he went down, did that coincide with Arkansas playing better basketball? Of course it did. But were they playing bad basketball because of him? No, I think the team was just a mess and they were trying to figure things out. But his ability to, at that point realize, all right, I've got to do things a little bit differently now. I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to coach him through. He kept saying, I got to drag him across the finish line. We're like, hey, we're waiting, man. Anytime now. We've got a historically bad start going on over here. This isn't going well. But getting guys in the right spots, getting DJ Wagner comfortable in the lead guard position, sliding Nelly Davis out of the corner where he was hanging out, giving Trevin Brazile, him getting that opportunity and being able to maximize it. You got to have the right kind of guys on your roster who won't falter and won't, tuck their tail and go into their shell and all those things when things are going bad. So he had that, and you were able to do that through recruiting, but continuing to coach those guys up and just, make some tweaks and changes throughout the course of the season until you found the right combinations, and then getting rolling with it. It was pretty impressive, and it's wild because I keep going back to all the things that we were told, like, hey, you're going to hear this, you're going to hear that. Don't believe it. Don't buy into it, man. Just vive la resistance or whatever. And then he kind of did most
Oh
of those
yeah.
things. So it was impressive to see. It was a great coaching job on his part. I got to give him credit where it's due. But hopefully moving forward, they can just kind of pick up where they left off and hit the ground running as opposed to waiting until the end of January to figure it out.
Well, let's talk about that because one, I'm really excited about this team. It's funny, right? Because again, you talk about the retention. It's like Coach Cal, Mr. Splash was like, it was like that one day, which of course had happened 20 minutes after I did my show of boom, these guys are back. Boom, this guy's testing the draft process. Boom, these guys are transferring in. There's your roster. See you in the summer. Have a good night. And it was like, well, shit, excuse my language, but it's like, what the hell just happened? It was a freaking tornado. And it's like, and I only bring it up because and I think I'm even guilty of this, is you look at, even at Kentucky, they signed 7, 8, 9, whatever it was, guys over the course of the offseason. BYU adds this transfer, this team adds that transfer, and it's kind of like this trickle. Boogie Flan doesn't go to Florida until the end of, end of May, beginning of June. I just bring it up because now that the roster is set, again, I think they're kind of sort of lost in the national conversation because it got done early. The pieces that were added late were really kind of player 12, 13, 11, whatever. But what are you? I mean, I don't know even what the right way. I mean, I don't know if it's realistic expectations, your expectations, just what are we looking for this year? Because I know what I think about this group, but I'm curious for your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just taking the next step. And you mentioned the offseason. I think you're onto something with Arkansas. Maybe they're flying under the radar a little bit. And I know it's tough to say because depending on where you look, that in the way too early polls or whatever, Arkansas is probably anywhere from like 8th to 15th or something. So like people know who you are and what you got going on. But it wasn't as sexy of an offseason as a lot of those schools that you mentioned who just killed it and spent a ton of money in the portal and everything. And a lot of that's because of the retention. That's just been a key aspect for a lot of these teams lately who've made Final Four runs and cut down the nets. I mean, look at Florida last year, for example. This is I think it's a well put together roster. I do. And it wasn't so much, Cal last year doing the thing where he's like, all right, I got to have my 8 to 9 guys and that's it. It was not having any options beyond that, not having a plan when you get injured. That's why they were winding up playing with 6 guys throughout the course of the game. I like what they've done this year because he's big on, hey, I don't want to have way too many mouths to feed. Kentucky has an awesome roster. I think they're going to be really, really good this year. They have a ton of potential and upside. If I'm Mark Pope, I'm not sleeping at night because I'm like, how am I going to keep all these guys happy? What's this going to look like? There are different ways to put this thing together. Cal's doing it a little bit of a different way. I really like the idea of having, he's got about 8 guys here who he feels great about. They're going to be your bulk minute guys. They're going to be your heavy rotation guys, the guys you lean on in the big games and in SEC play. Well, and then 9 and 10 are a couple high upside, talented 4-star freshmen and guys like Isaiah Sealy, who's been better than advertised, Paolo Semedo, who's coming in, who people aren't talking about, but they should be.
You're talking about him. Every time I tune into your podcast, it's like 40 minutes straight on.
I'm telling you, man, that's my guy. That's my hot take.
It's okay.
And so you got them, and then you got, like 11 and 12 are a couple international guys, like you said, more on the ancillary side of things in the back end of the roster, but they've been playing professionally. They've got some experience. So I like the way that it's put together here. They're going to be leaning on the returners quite a bit. You got a couple 5-star freshmen in Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas that people are real excited about, but you don't have to overly rely on them. They don't have to do it all for you because you got some of these other pieces here. I think it's a good mix. We'll see what it looks like, but I think the expectation around here is, hey, don't get off to such a slow start. Now the non-conference schedule is brutal, so they're probably going to take some losses here and there. Let's not do the 8 and 10 below 500 thing in SEC play again. Let's flip that thing around and be better in the league. Get a higher seed and take the next step. Now, when Eric Musselman came to Arkansas, he did the thing where it was like, okay, they got to get the monkey off their back. They're getting to NCAA tournaments. Maybe they'll win a game, but they haven't been to a second weekend since the 90s. What's going on here? Well, he got them past that point. And so you bring John Calipari in now, and it's like, all right, the next step is to get back to that elusive Final Four. And it's been elusive for him for a little while now, too. I think first year getting to a Sweet 16 with all the factors that they had going into it, wound up being a great season. You're happy with it. But can you show continued progress forward and take the next step? And I think that's the expectation around here this year.
I was going to ask, and it's kind of a two-part question. Part one kind of hinges on part two. Is one, do you think how much longer, like realistically for him? I don't have his age. I think he's 63, 64, something like that. But then two, he's going to have a team that's good enough every year. I know the tournament is a crapshoot. Do you believe that by the time he leaves, he will get Arkansas to that elusive Final Four? Because to your point, even just as an outsider, I kind of know how much it means to the fan base.
I really do think that he will. And I know people are like, well, this dude's not going to get on here and say that he won't. Right.
Sure.
But no, I do believe that. And there was a time throughout the course of the season where I wasn't so sure what it was going to look like. And I went into it thinking I need to get through this year and see what the next one looks like before we can really start making some determinations on it. For the reasons I said earlier, he was kind of put in a situation where he had to adapt, he had to change, he had to evolve just to get a team put on the floor. Well, what's it going to look like after that? Seeing the way he went about the offseason, seeing the way he's prioritized certain things with retention, the way he's going about his recruiting, seeing his comfortability. I just feel like he feels confident in what they have going on around here. So, I think they'll get there. I don't know if this is going to be the year. Maybe it'll be next year, 2 years down the road. He did joke at his press conference about, he was at Kentucky for 15 years and somewhere for 10 and somewhere for 9. And he's like, I'm going to be at Arkansas for 12 years. And then he stopped himself. He's like, there's no way I'm going to be here for 12 years. And we're not expecting that. Maybe 4 or 5 years I could see, but that would take him till he's about 70 or so. I could see that maybe being the case, but as long as he's got the support, which we know that he does with NIL and everything like that, I think he's going to be in a pretty good position to win at a high level. The only caveat that I will give, though, is anytime he gets a microphone in front of his face, he goes on the stump about the transfer portal and getting this thing reeled in and figuring it all out. And we've got to have a better understanding of what's going on. There's not enough clarity. It's too murky. We don't know where the sport's headed. And that seems to be something that's really frustrating him. And he always says, if I ever get to the point where I feel like I can't help families, if I can't help these kids anymore, then I'm out, then I'm done, because that's the reason why I'm doing it at this point. And his frustration with the portal and some of those things like that, that would be the only avenue I could see to where he might call it quits a little bit sooner. I don't think it would have anything to do with what's going on at Arkansas or the success that he could have on the floor so much as just the state of the game and where it's headed. And frankly, none of us know exactly where this thing's going.
No, and I will also say this is that, early on in his time at Kentucky, he said, I'm going to, this is not a job you stay at for 10 years. And he was there for however many and ended up being 15. Really quickly, since I have you, and listen, we're going from the highs of Arkansas basketball to, I got to talk about things on the other sport that isn't baseball. And I'm just asking you because I have you and I might as well. And I don't mean to end this on a downer. And I feel like everyone's going to be pissed, dude. You're talking Final Fours. Now you got to talk about the football team. But I mean, if I have you, I might as well ask you. So Arkansas fans, I apologize. I'm kind of curious though, because I was thinking about this even before knowing you were coming on. So I'm on the national scale. I get it, right? Like there are certain things that, like the perspective that I'm going to have will never be as good as yours on Arkansas. But I bring it up because with football, obviously we're entering a year where Sam Pittman is, he's on the hot seat, whatever. Everybody knows the deal. But I've also heard a lot of other national people that kind of have this almost elitist attitude of how dare Arkansas assume that they should be this or be that or whatever. And I'd just be curious from somebody who covers it every single day inside that program, inside Arkansas.com and the radio show as well. What are realistic, not win losses, but what do Arkansas fans want out of their program and kind of to see on a day-to-day basis? Because I don't really get the sense that it's a fan base that demands this many wins or this many this or this many that. And I think it's just hey, can we not get our roster pillaged by Ole Miss every offseason? Can we not have this, whatever. So I'm just curious, as somebody who covers it, what is the expectation of most fans, understanding that there are extremes in every fan base, but what are realistic expectations? What do the fans want out of the program right now that they're not seeing?
Yeah, I think they want their seat at the table. They want their respect and their opportunity to shine a little bit on the SEC level. And yeah, you're right. I don't think it's unreasonable for a Razorback fan to say, man, it just feels like most years, why can't this program be in the 7-8 win range? And then every, 3-4 years or so, you've got that big one and you win 10 games, or you're in that conversation, or you're knocking on the door for a college football playoff or whatever. They just want to have that kind of experience and consistency. And I think it frustrates people quite a bit to think back to, I mean, it was about a decade there of toiling in mediocrity, which is kind of where you're at right now. I mean, Arkansas wasn't bad last year. They weren't bad at all. 2 years ago they were, and they made a little bit of progress. But I think people get a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of, hey, take your 6-6 and shut up. And that's, you talk about that elitist mentality. It feels like a lot of people are telling them that, like, hey, know your place, know where you belong in these conversations. And that's what people don't accept. Like, if you've got the one off now and then, again, that's one thing. But to your point, yeah, not having the roster completely pillaged, not having to have an entirely new team every year, being able to retain your stars, not having to do the thing where you're saying, oh, this NIL stuff is killing us, man. We're just getting outbid by everybody. Hopefully we get this revenue share stuff to even the playing field so we can compete. No, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear what they're saying over at Ole Miss, where it's like, no, we hear the rules about these salary caps or whatever you want to call it over here. We're not worried about that. We're going to get our team. They want to be in those types of conversations. So I think some of it's the messaging, but by and large, I don't know that there are a whole lot of Razorback fans. Everybody has those dreams of, hey, let's get to the mecca of the sport and everything. But I think they just want to be above average. They feel like they belong in those conversations on a yearly basis, and just have that every few years, man, that opportunity to go and do something special. They did it with Petrino back when he was the head coach in his first go around, and getting to that point every few years, I don't think is an unrealistic thing. And anybody who's upset about where the program is at right now, I don't feel like they should really be ridiculed for that. I think it's very understandable. A tough situation that you're in going into this season with the flipped roster and a tough schedule and
the flip schedule. That's the problem, is the flip schedule. But
exactly, man. And you're in a position where you're picked 14th or whatever in the league, and so it becomes a little bit difficult to talk about, because if you're picked 14th in your conference, that kind of coincides with 4-8, 5-7 type of years. Well, I think Arkansas is better than that this year. The question is how much better. So then if you say, well, I could see him going 6-6 or something like that, then you get accused of being the guy that's accepting mediocrity. So it's a tricky situation that we find ourselves in here in Fayetteville, no doubt.
Well, I'll say this. I remember the day it was announced that Texas and Oklahoma could leave for the SEC, and I just said, why would Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Arkansas is included in that group, why would you make I don't care how much more money you're making, why would you make your path harder? And I do think there is something psychological about being picked 6th in the SEC West versus 14th in a 16-team SEC. Let me ask you, as an outsider, again, just my outside, you mentioned all the portal and rev share and this and that. It feels like, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I've been wrong before, I'll be wrong again. Doesn't really feel like there's a plan, right? And like that's sometimes like what I look at all these programs, right? Like Kiffin was like, we're the portal team. Whatever. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Like Texas Tech right now is literally just, they're the NIL team, and I hate to say it because I don't want to speak for them. That, they claim they're doing everything on the up and up, but whatever. Like, like it just feels like everybody sort of has a plan. And again, I just feel like with Arkansas as an outsider, and maybe I'm wrong, like I don't know, are they, defense is good sometimes. It wasn't like Petrino comes in, the offense is good, but they lose it. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like there's like a concrete, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is how we're like Billy Napier's like, we're going to build through high school. Hugh Freeze too. And maybe it won't work. And maybe Hugh Freeze will be fired this year, but he's like, we're going to supplement through the portal. We're going to focus on high school and development. That's what it feels like to me. Am I crazy for saying it?
No, you're not. It's interesting that it kind of feels like the plan has been, or at least the way it's been, like the message has been delivered to Razorback fans is the plan has been the rev share stuff. Sam Pittman's been pretty vocal about the frustrations with, the gap in NIL relative to some of their peers in the SEC and what that looks like. And all along it's been like, well, when rev share goes into effect, it's going to even the playing field. When rev share goes into effect, and we're operating on level space here, we feel like we're closer to that 9-win team than the 2-10s before I got here. These are all things that he said. And so that's all great in theory. And you get that. And so then it's like, okay, cool. Let's see what this winds up looking like this season and going into next season. Well, then because we know this is how it works in college athletics with trying to cap what student athletes can earn and what agents can earn and everything like that, they were going to push back on this. So all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, actually collectives aren't going away. And if you thought that there weren't going to be ways to get around this, you're kind of crazy. And so now we're looking at, well, what are they going to do from an NIL standpoint to supplement all this revenue share stuff? That way they don't have that built in, oh yeah, there's just this financial gap that we can't compete with. That's not what people want to hear. So that's a huge part of it that they have to figure out. And then just talking about identity on the field, it's a little bit difficult to say because you're right. I think that they've plugged some holes, but I think they've also created some others. And when you have 50 some odd new players on your roster, some of them are going to be better than the ones who left. Some of them aren't. You just don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. So they're going to be well into the season, I think, before they figure that out. My hope is that the offensive line is improved. That way Taylor Green isn't running for his life the entire season. That would be cool. And then we'll see what it looks like defensively. I think the secondary is going to be improved. I'm worried about the pass rush. There's no Landon Jackson on this roster. They've got to figure some things out from that front. So we'll see, man. It's there's more questions than answers with Arkansas football right now. Like I said, I'm optimistic that they're going to be better, I think, than those projections kind of have them at. How much, though, is it going to be enough to, quote unquote, save Sam Pittman's job for those who think that he's on the hot seat or to suffice the fan base that's really hungry and anxious to have more? I'm not so sure about that one. We'll see.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think, because it's weird because you guys are so into it, and like there's nuance that somebody like me doesn't have, where the relationship with the AD, the AD clearly didn't want to make a move at this time last year. I want to get you in trouble, by the way, if you can't answer the question, but like, where is this football program 6 months from now? In other words, like Sam Pittman coaching, is he coming off a season better than expected? Does he have a bad season and he's retained anyway? Like, what do you think that football program looks like when we get to January 1st, 2026?
Yeah, I really get the sense that I don't get the sense that he's under as much pressure as maybe people feel like externally. Like you see the hot seat list come out and everything like that. No, here are the odds for the first SEC coach to get fired. And, Sam's always pretty high up there. I don't know. I'm not saying that the seat isn't warm. I don't know that it's as hot as maybe the outside perception really is. And a lot of that goes into the whole situation from last year. And I know the buyout had a lot to do with that, anticipating and trying to get ahead of, all right, well, if we have to pay the buyouts for a head coach and his staff and hire a new one, we've also got to figure out this revenue share money. A lot of it's financially driven. And so those factors are going to change a little bit, but also I think that they probably would like to at least see it out from a standpoint of, okay, now that we have these new regulations or whatever you want to call them with the House settlement and all that in play, how does that change things? How does that impact things? As far as, 6 months from now, what it's going to look like, to me, my thought process is I think the expectation should be, regardless of a difficult schedule, you're going to get that, man, in the SEC no matter what. You got to play the games in front of you, that they should see improvement over last year. I'm not going to be unreasonable here and say, oh, you got to win 9 games with this schedule. They went 6-6. They won a bowl game, win 7 regular season, and then get to a bowl. I think that signs of progress. If he finishes the same, I would probably lean towards him being retained. But not necessarily because that's what I do, but that's what I think they would do. But if they have a losing season, just with the some of the consternation in the fan base, and depending on how it looks going around the way, yeah, we might be in a situation where we're doing a coaching search this time in January.
All right, my man, Curtis Wilkerson, Inside Arkansas. You can hear him every day. What is it, noon Central Time? Is that my time zone? My time zones are so screwy. It's so funny because I have an alert for when you guys go live, and I think your guys' Twitters alert me too. And being on the West Coast versus the East Coast, like I was on the East Coast a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, they haven't even started yet, and now I'm on the West Coast, and I'm usually seeing you in the morning when I'm getting ready for my show. So, yeah, Inside Arkansas every day, Monday through Friday, the pod at the Palace, a lot of basketball talk, grinding through the August shows in basketball. So we appreciate, we appreciate your service, man. There's not a lot to talk about right now. So keep up, keep up the excellent work. We appreciate you. And yeah, maybe, I don't know how much thirst there is for football talk right now, but maybe once we get closer to basketball, we'll have you on again. And, I always appreciate you, man. Thank you for the time.
Appreciate it, brother.